Hello and welcome to the Week 7 devlog for QuiVr, my HTC Vive archery game. I'd like to start off by thanking everybody who participated in the first week of the alpha. I've got tons of feedback, a big list of features to implement, and fixed tons of crashes that people were having. So I think I've improved the performance a lot and solved a number of issues that people were having with crashes, and so hopefully now everybody has a much smoother experience with the alpha going forward. But I really appreciate all the feedback. I read all the emails and messages and take everyone into consideration. Even the ones that are a bit fairly highly critical, I take them into account and really do care about what you guys think, because ultimately it's not just me who's wants to have fun playing this game. In that note, I want to remind everybody that the alpha is free to download and available. There's a link here below in the video description. There's a link on the Reddit thread if you're from there. So I would love more people to check it out and give me feedback, because I really appreciate it and I think it makes the game better. So let's dive into some of the updates for this week. The first thing is to do with the QuiVr. A lot of people were having some problems with placing the QuiVr on their body and getting it to feel correct. So I've taken some suggestions from people and kind of created my own pivot point system, where you can take the QuiVr and put it to very specific places on your body that would be kind of useful in real life archery. So you can no longer put it on your face or anything like that. Instead, when you grab the QuiVr, there are points that pop up that you can place the QuiVr into. So there are 2 points on your hips and 2 points on your back, depending on if you want to use your right or left hand side. If you're right or left handed, that'll make more sense. So the way it works is if you just let the QuiVr go, it just kind of drops. If you let the QuiVr go while it's inside of one of these points, though, it snaps into position and gives your controller a bit of haptic feedback so that you know that you got it correctly. Because of these new point systems, I've been able to increase the trigger volume for these, so it's much easier to grab an arrow out of them and knock it, and you won't be accidentally grabbing your QuiVr or anything, because I've changed some of the buttons around and how you move from object to object with your hands. The other 2 points are in your shoulders, so you'll be able to see, you can kind of see the shadow here. But if I put it right in my back, it snaps into position, and so I can grab an arrow out of my shoulder like you would in some of the other archery games that are out there right now. In terms of viewing your body, I've added this feature. Right now it's just to kind of make videos and if you want to show other people what you look like, but it also gives you a sense of what you look like in 3D. You can hit the touchpad and a little camera appear. Right now it's just a little sphere, but that's a camera that you can look at and toggle on and off. So you can see I have a helmet on, I have my QuiVr in my back, the bow in my hand, and this will generally be currently my idea of what other players will see if you're in a multiplayer game. So I'll be working on that in the future. It's not ready yet, but this is generally the loadout that you'll see other people wearing while in a multiplayer game. Obviously, easy points of customization are the helmet and the bow and the QuiVr. Maybe even gloves, but it's been so much of a pain to even get these hands working that I doubt I'll be doing customizable hands unless I have someone else doing the work for creating the assets for those. But you can see that now if I grab the QuiVr out, you can see the 2 matching attach points there. So if you're left-handed, you'll be able to use that one and grab from there. If you're right-handed, you'll probably want to use the other one. And one of the nice things is I've fixed the issue that was last week with the arrow being held in the left hand, so it now is held correctly, so it works the exact same way as the right-handed bow. Please, if anybody's left-handed, give it a try. Make sure I'm not missing anything important for that. So let me turn this camera back off so we can talk about some of the other little bits of information. I have fixed the target practice and enemies not getting hit occasionally when the arrow was fired at them. It was just a collision bug, so that's been fixed, and I've played about 15 games of the target practice, haven't had a single time where I hit the target and an arrow bounced off. Same with all the enemies. Speaking of enemies, that brings us to this new feature here. What I've done is I've kind of created a new, or my low fidelity version of the Labs longbow. And the way it works is enemies spawn at 4 different spawn points and kind of walk down and attack your rune stone. So there are 2 at the top and then 2 at the bottom that they can come around to and attack. As the as the waves increase, you'll get more and more powerful enemies. Right now they're fairly basic. The models are there, but they don't do anything special. They just have some armor, or can run faster or hit harder or something like that. So the enemies are still very basic. That's not a final version, but there is definitely variation. Before I show you that, I just wanted to give a shout out to some modders that do Skyrim mods. They've released a full open source or Creative Commons full audio conversion, so you can use any of those audio assets, and they're really amazing. They have a couple really cool bow sounds, but most of the things are the impacts, the different types of impacts. So I'm using a number of new impact sounds, and while they don't require attribution, I'm definitely going to give it in the full game, because that has saved me a lot of money and a lot of time searching for those assets, because they're really awesome. And I'll give you a little taste of one right now. The teleport sound. So there's some pretty cool teleportation sounds. I have these particle effects that come out. So I'm really happy with how those sounds work, and I'm adding some more effects to the game to make it feel more interesting and kind of high fantasy ish, while still giving you that gritty feeling of you being just an archer on the bridge. So without further ado, I'll start the siege mode, and all you have to do is you hit the menu button, and there are instructions that start at the beginning of the game that show you all the controls. But the way that you start a siege is start a new game is just by hitting this new siege button. So let's start. The way it works is just kind of like the longbow. There are a couple waves, or right now I think there are 15 specific waves. After that, it just adds more, but with the same enemy set as the last wave. If you didn't already notice, I've replaced the audio spheres here because I've hooked up the audio system, so you may not have noticed, but the audio changed from the adventure to the slow heroic, and as we get farther along, the music will pick up. There's only 3 levels right now, but there are definitely going to be more in the future. But I think it's a great proof of concept to show how the dynamic audio works. So we have a couple of enemies. All of these enemies are full ragdolls. If they have armor, it can be shot off. They all have a particular amount of health at this low stage in the game, though everything pretty much dies in one hit. But if I shoot the shield of that skeleton, he should... Oh, must have clipped him. The enemies... Oh, so that guy is an elite enemy, and he is 10% of the time the enemies will spawn as elite, which means they have increased health, increased damage, and increased size. Eventually, they'll also get special powers that correspond to the particular type of enemy that was made an elite, but it has a really cool turbulent particle effect. The particle effect is a bit intense, so if anybody has an issue with it, please let me know so I can get a more toned down particle effect in the settings. The other thing is, this is the first time I've had to use pooling, because instantiating those particle systems for each elite enemy kind of just breaks the game for a second. So those particle systems are completely pooled and reused for each enemy. So there's, I think, 5 spawned at the beginning of the game, and they'll transfer between the enemies as they die and get made elite. So the music is now at stage 2. Hopefully you guys heard that transition a bit earlier when that happened. But hopefully I haven't tried to see how far I can get. I've always found a little bug every time I've done a long play, so I've always stopped early, but I'd love to hear what level you guys get to, because eventually these enemies start to overrun you, and if anybody can give feedback on at what point how many enemies on screen start to slow the game up, I'd like to hear about that too, because I will probably have to dynamically decide how fast the enemies despawn after being killed, so that it doesn't get too intense. Ooh, we got an elite orc. They have quite a bit of health normally, so the elite version is a bit intense. Alright, so I'm only going to play to wave 10 so that you can see the boss mechanic that we have in place, and kind of see the audio transition there. So at wave 10 there's a boss that I hope we'll get to see. Looks like we will. Alright. So here's our boss. I think currently it has a bit low health for a boss enemy, but I think in the version that I've uploaded, he has a bit more. Yeah, so you can kill him pretty easily, but the final version, he's gonna be quite a pain. And then the audio transitions back as it. So I'll let them kind of swarm the area as I finish up the devlog for this week. This coming week, I think I'm going to start working on the multiplayer aspect of the game, because I really do want to get that working, and the sooner it gets done, the easier it is, because as I add more features, I'll be keeping that in mind. So here we go. We have runestone lost if you lose. I want to keep the multiplayer system in mind as I add new features, like what types of arrows you're shooting, because I want all of that to be synchronized across the server for everybody. So I think I'll be starting to take a look at multiplayer, and I think the way that'll work is in the alpha there will be an option in this menu to go to the multiplayer server, and it'll probably just be kind of an empty room that people will be able to spawn into and see if anybody else is online. I don't know how much you'll be able to do in there, probably just wave at each other. I won't have audio chat implemented at that point, and there probably will only be 20 spaces, because that's the free limit that Photon Networking, which is going to be my network solution, offers. So that's they offer 20 concurrent users for free. So when it does come out, if you aren't able to join, hopefully I'll have a message that just says the server's full. That's being very optimistic and assuming that I would get 20 people at the same time. But judging from some of the other multiplayer games like the Cloud Lens mini golf, that may not be an issue. So I'll be working on some multiplayer stuff, and I know that everybody is really excited about that because there are definitely not enough multiplayer games out for VR right now. That is probably going to be a fairly involved process, and until it's ready, it won't have much to show. So if next week's devlog is a bit short, that's probably why. So I think that's about it for this log. Doesn't look like I have too many more options. This hopefully you'll be able to play with, give me feedback, because this is kind of the general idea. It's going to be much more fleshed out in the future, but that type of mechanics of protecting the wall, being able to teleport over and shoot down at enemies, that's all kind of the meat of the game. So I definitely want early feedback on that system, and just to make sure that everything's working and it's still fun to play. So I think that's it for this devlog. Please keep sending me feedback. I really appreciate it, and I drop things a lot of the time, what I'm currently working on, to fix issues, and I try to respond to people as quickly as I can when there's bugs or other things. So I really do care about what you guys are saying, and hopefully that's evident by my responses and my additions this week in bringing out the new features. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to get continued feedback on this alpha, and I think that's it. Happy shooting!